The Galactic Academy floated silently among the stars, a massive structure of shining metal and glass. Its towers reached like fingers into the void, and its halls were filled with students from hundreds of worlds, each carrying knowledge and skills that had taken centuries to develop. The Academy was a place where the brightest minds in the galaxy came to learn, experiment, and compete. For most species, it was a dream that could take a lifetime to reach, but today something unusual was arriving. Professor Xylar, called a voice over the intercom of the observation deck. A new student from Earth has arrived. Professor Xylar, a tall Thalran scholar with 4 intelligent eyes and silver feathers that shimmered like starlight, turned sharply. His long claws tapped the floor in mild irritation. He had heard rumors about humans, small and primitive beings from a planet barely able to leave their solar system. Some of his colleagues thought it amusing that a human child had even been admitted. A human child, Xylar repeated, his voice a mixture of disbelief and suspicion. Surely they mean a young adolescent, perhaps 10 of their standard years. Even so, humans are unpredictable, the intercom crackled. 10 years old, sir, female, name Lena Carter. Xylar's 4 eyes blinked rapidly. 10 years old? And a girl? From Earth? He did not understand why the Academy would accept such a being. Surely she would struggle to keep up with alien students who had lived for centuries and trained from birth in advanced logic, mathematics, and problem-solving. Yet protocol demanded he meet her. Moments later, the massive doors of the Academy's main hall slid open. A small figure stepped through. Lena Carter was tiny, her brown hair pulled into a neat ponytail and her Earth-made tablet clutched to her chest. Her big brown eyes shone with curiosity, not fear. She looked around at the tall alien students, most of them hovering or floating due to their anti-gravity suits, and she smiled. "Hello," she called brightly. "I'm Lena. I like puzzles." The hall fell silent. Students and teachers alike stared at her. Some of the younger aliens giggled at how small and fragile she appeared. Others whispered among themselves, wondering if this human could survive a single day at the Academy. Professor Xylar, however, did not speak. He watched her carefully. There was something in the way she held herself that suggested more than just a child's curiosity. Her eyes were steady, her smile was calm, and she seemed completely unafraid in a place that was intimidating even for centuries-old scholars. "You may follow me," Xylar said finally, his voice echoing across the hall. Lena followed without hesitation, walking between his long legs and staying perfectly balanced despite the gravity differences in the hall. They entered a classroom filled with complex holographic displays. Symbols floated in the air, equations shimmered across glass panels, and small drones zipped between the desks, projecting 3-dimensional shapes. Alien students were already working quietly, their long tentacles or multiple arms moving in perfect coordination as they solved problems that would take humans years to understand. Xylar gestured to a floating chair. "Sit," he said. "We will see if the human child can keep pace." Lena climbed onto the chair easily, placing her tablet on her lap. She looked around at the swirling symbols and grids of data. "These are puzzles, right?" she asked, her voice cheerful. "I like puzzles." One of the older alien students, a Vrelk named Shara, laughed. "Puzzles?" she said. Her 6 eyes narrowed. "These are multi-dimensional equations. No human could solve even one in 100 years, much less understand them. This child will fail within minutes," Lena shrugged. "I'll try my best," she said simply. Professor Xylar's feathers ruffled slightly. He did not like being surprised, and already he was curious. He turned to a large holographic grid in the center of the room. The display flickered as he activated the challenge. "This is the 7-fold paradox," Xylar announced. "It requires understanding of multi-dimensional symmetry, temporal logic, and probability calculus. No student has ever completed it in under 6 hours." The alien students leaned forward, eager to see how the human would fail. Lena tilted her head slightly and said, "Can I start now?" The room went completely silent. One of Xylar's eyes twitched in disbelief. "You start now?" he stammered. "But the complexity," Lena nodded. "I like hard puzzles." She tapped her tablet and a stream of glowing symbols lifted into the air. Equations rearranged themselves as her fingers moved swiftly across the screen. She hummed softly, a sound almost musical, and the holographic puzzle seemed to respond to her touch. Minutes passed. The alien students watched, mouths open. The lights of the grid shifted faster than any algorithm could calculate. Symbols and patterns aligned perfectly, folding into solutions that even the oldest AI tutors could not predict. Finally, Lena tapped the last symbol and the grid blinked green. "Done," she said, smiling at the stunned room. The silence was deafening. Professor Zylar's 4 eyes widened. He stepped closer, examining the grid. That is impossible," he whispered. Lena looked at him innocently. "It's just pattern recognition." "You overcomplicated it," Shara the Vrelk gaped. "Overcomplicated it?" she hissed. "Do you realize what you just solved?" "I see puzzles as pieces of a story," Lena said. "If you watch carefully, they tell you how they want to be solved." Zylar's feathers ruffled. His mind, trained for centuries in strict logic, was struggling to comprehend what he had just witnessed. She was a human child, yes, but her brain approached problems in a way no alien or AI could. Where others relied on rigid rules, she relied on intuition and creativity. Throughout the hall, whispers spread. Students and teachers alike were talking about the human who had solved a puzzle designed to defeat even the brightest of minds. "I want to study her methods," Zylar muttered to himself. He realized that this child could change everything the Academy thought about intelligence. Humans, a species often underestimated, possessed a kind of thinking that was flexible, imaginative, and astonishingly fast. By the end of the day, Lena had completed several more puzzles, each more complex than the last. She remained calm, cheerful, and energetic as if solving the puzzles was a game. The alien students grew both nervous and fascinated. Here was a species so small, so seemingly fragile, yet capable of things that no one had imagined. As the sun set over the domes of the Galactic Academy, Lena sat in the observation garden, her tablet resting on her knees. Floating holographic flowers glimmered around her, casting soft light across her face. Professor Zylar approached, more curious than ever. "You are remarkable," he said slowly, "but I do not understand. How does a human child from a primitive world solve puzzles designed to challenge the greatest minds in the galaxy?" Lena smiled softly. "I just like thinking, and I like puzzles. They tell me their secrets if I listen carefully." Zylar stared at her, a feeling he had never experienced in centuries of study. Respect, awe, curiosity, and something more, hope. That night, as the stars turned above the Academy, Professor Zylar realized that something extraordinary had just arrived. Humanity, small and underestimated, had begun to show its true potential. And this child, Lena Carter, would be the first to open the galaxy's eyes to the power of human thought, creativity, and courage. The arrival of the little human girl had changed everything. The Academy and perhaps the galaxy would never be the same again. The next morning, the Galactic Academy buzzed with excitement. Every corridor and hall whispered the name Lena Carter, the human child who had astonished even the most learned alien scholars. Holographic news screens displayed her picture, small, smiling, and clutching her tablet. Comments poured in from students across the galaxy, some skeptical, some awed, and others genuinely curious. Professor Zylar, meanwhile, sat in his private study, pacing in slow, precise steps. He had spent centuries analyzing intelligence, training students from dozens of species, and mentoring brilliant minds. Yet he had never witnessed anything like Lena. How could a human child solve the sevenfold paradox in mere minutes? It was a puzzle designed to challenge centuries of knowledge, to test mental endurance and logic. And she had not only solved it, she had done so casually as if it were a simple game. He could not ignore this. The Academy needed to understand her abilities. But he would do more than observe. He would challenge her. By mid-morning, Lena was summoned to the main lecture hall. It was enormous, stretching the length of 3 city blocks, with a ceiling that simulated a spinning galaxy above. Alien students of all shapes and sizes had gathered, their eyes wide with anticipation. Floating desks hummed softly as holographic puzzles flickered in mid-air, waiting to be solved. Professor Zylar stood at the front, his feathers shimmering with tension. "Today," he said, his voice echoing across the hall, "we will test the limits of the human child." The room went silent. Even the most curious students knew the challenge Zylar prepared would be unlike anything they had faced before. He activated a massive holographic grid in the center of the hall. Symbols and geometric shapes rotated in 3 dimensions, twisting and folding in impossible patterns. Lines of light intersected in sequences that defied conventional logic. The grid expanded, stretching from floor to ceiling, as if it were a miniature universe contained within the hall. "This," Xylar said, "is the Omega Labyrinth. It has defeated every student, every scholar, and even advanced neural AIs designed for problem solving. It requires not only intelligence but intuition, pattern recognition, and a deep understanding of multidimensional logic." He turned toward Lena. "Child, you may attempt it, but know this: no being in the history of the Academy has solved it." Lena looked at the twisting holograms, her brow furrowed slightly. "It looks tricky," she said softly. "But I like tricky." The hall fell into a tense silence. Alien students hovered around, some in disbelief, some in nervous curiosity. A few of the most advanced AI assistants displayed on the sides of the room, their light circuits flickering as they attempted to calculate probabilities in real time. Lena set her tablet on a floating stand, tapping it lightly. The symbols and patterns on the Omega Labyrinth responded, moving and shifting as if alive. The child hummed, a soft melody that seemed to harmonize with the glowing holograms. Minutes passed. The aliens held their breath. They watched as her fingers moved swiftly across the tablet, tracing shapes and connecting patterns. The holograms twisted, rotated, and aligned under her touch. No one had ever seen a mind work this fast, this fluidly, some of the older students whispered. She's not thinking like an alien," said one. "She's improvising?" Professor Xylar's 4 eyes narrowed. He leaned closer, watching every movement. Her strategy was unlike any method he had taught in centuries. She did not rely solely on logic or brute force calculation. She watched the shapes, listened to the patterns, and somehow predicted the solution before the puzzle was even complete. Time passed. The Omega Labyrinth was designed to last 6 hours for the most brilliant minds. For Lena, only 20 minutes had gone by, yet the symbols in the hologram began to align, as if the universe itself were bending to her will. The alien students gasped. "Impossible," whispered Shara, the Vrelk student who had laughed at her the previous day. No one can do this." And yet Lena's small fingers moved steadily, tapping the tablet with perfect precision. She paused once, tilted her head, and smiled. "Almost there," she said quietly. Then, with a final touch, the Omega Labyrinth shimmered and blinked green. Lines of light merged into perfect geometric harmony. Symbols folded neatly into one another. The impossible puzzle was solved. The hall erupted in astonishment. Students floated back in shock, some dropping their tablets. The AI assistants flickered in confusion, unable to process what had just happened. Professor Xylar stepped forward, speechless for a moment. Then he spoke, his voice low but filled with awe. "That is not possible." Lena shrugged, her eyes twinkling. "It's just seeing the pieces work together," she said. "I like patterns." For a moment, no one moved. Then the crowd erupted into cheers. Aliens of all shapes and sizes applauded, some in disbelief, others in admiration. It was not just a victory, it was a revelation. A human child had solved the Omega Labyrinth, a puzzle designed to challenge the greatest minds across the galaxy. Professor Xylar approached Lena carefully. "Child," he said, his feathers ruffling slightly. How did you understand it so quickly?" Lena smiled, tilting her head. "I listen to the puzzles," she said simply. "They tell me what to do if I pay attention." The professor's mind raced. Centuries of logic and study told him that this should be impossible, and yet here she was proving every assumption wrong. He realized something extraordinary. Human thought was not bound by rigid rules. It could leap, improvise, and find solutions in ways no alien or AI could anticipate. Over the next several hours, Lena solved additional puzzles, each more complex than the last. Some involved collapsing stars, quantum probability webs, or impossible geometric sequences. Each time she worked calmly, humming softly and tapping her tablet. The alien students and professors alike could hardly keep up. By the end of the day, Professor Xylar had seen enough. He called a meeting of the Academy's senior council. "We must study her methods," he said. "This human child is not just talented. She has abilities that defy our understanding of intelligence," council members murmured. Many were skeptical, unwilling to accept that a human, small, fragile, and from a primitive world, could surpass centuries of alien study. Yet even they could not deny the evidence. Holographic recordings showed Lena solving puzzles that had defeated generations of scholars and advanced AI minds. In the quiet of the evening, Lena sat alone in the Academy's observation garden. Floating holographic flowers swirled around her, glowing softly under the simulated stars. Professor Xylar approached, his steps cautious. "You are remarkable," he said finally, his voice soft with awe. "I have spent centuries studying the galaxy's greatest minds, and yet you surpass them all." At 10 years old, Lena looked up at him, a small smile on her face. "I just like puzzles," she said. "I like thinking, and I like listening to what the puzzles want." The professor stared at her, realizing that something profound was happening. Humans were not just primitive creatures as the galaxy believed. They were unpredictable, imaginative, and capable of seeing solutions where no one else could. Perhaps this child was just the beginning. That night, Professor Xylar sat in his study, reviewing recordings of Lena's work. His feathers twitched in thought. "She is different," he muttered. "Her mind does not follow our logic, yet it reaches answers no one else can. The galaxy must learn from this human." Meanwhile, Lena lay in her dorm, her tablet beside her, softly humming as she drifted to sleep. The puzzles she had solved today were merely the beginning. She did not yet know the challenges ahead, the competitions, the mysteries of other worlds, or the dangers she would face. But she knew one thing: thinking, listening, and trusting her own mind was the key. And the galaxy would soon discover that humans, small and underestimated, had the potential to achieve greatness beyond imagination. The Omega Labyrinth had been conquered, and the journey had only just begun. The news of Lena Carter's extraordinary achievement spread across the Galactic Academy like a supernova. Holographic feeds displayed her solving the Omega Labyrinth in record time. Alien students from dozens of species stopped their lessons just to watch her process puzzles that had been thought unsolvable. Professors whispered in astonishment. Even the AI tutors were overwhelmed, their predictive algorithms failing to anticipate her next moves. In the cafeteria, students hovered around glowing tables, their voices buzzing with excitement. "Did you see her fingers move?" one Vrelk student whispered. "She's faster than our quantum processors." "She doesn't just solve puzzles," another added, a Luminian with 6 radiant eyes shimmering. "She feels them. It's like the puzzles are talking to her." Professor Xylar, however, remained serious. He had spent centuries mastering logic, mathematics, and pattern analysis. Yet he had never encountered a mind like Lena's. He realized that this child was more than talented. She was a phenomenon. "Today we will see her abilities in action again," he told the Council of Senior Professors. "But this time it will not be controlled puzzles. She will face problems designed to test creativity and intuition, not just logic," the Council murmured. One of them, a crystal-like being named Threx, spoke first. "Professor, the human child is remarkable, yes. But is it wise to expose her to challenges beyond her species' experience? They may be too complex." Xylar shook his feathers. "No. She has shown the ability to understand patterns no alien can predict. If we do not test her, we cannot know the extent of her capabilities. And the galaxy must know what humans are capable of." The challenge was set. In the central hall, a crowd of students gathered, buzzing with anticipation. The floor lit up with holographic grids, floating spheres, and streams of light representing complex data flows. Each puzzle was more than just a challenge. It was an experiment in cognition, creativity, and rapid adaptation. Lena arrived, calm and cheerful as always. She carried her small tablet, her eyes scanning the floating displays. "These look interesting," she said softly, smiling at the array of shapes and symbols. Professor Xylar stepped forward. "This is the continuum grid. It is a simulation of a collapsing star field intertwined with temporal loops. Each solution requires multiple steps, not just logic, but intuition and predictive reasoning. Even our best neural networks cannot solve it consistently." Lena tilted her head. "Sounds fun," she said simply. The first puzzle activated. Streams of data twisted like glowing snakes, folding in impossible patterns. Alien students hesitated, unsure where to begin. Lena, however, touched her tablet lightly. She hummed, her fingers moving in patterns that were gentle but deliberate. Symbols responded instantly, aligning and folding under her guidance. Within minutes, the first puzzle resolved itself into a perfect geometric harmony. The crowd gasped. The second puzzle was even more complex. Floating spheres collided and split, forming intricate lattices. Each movement required anticipating 3 steps ahead, and the slightest miscalculation would collapse the entire structure. Lena paused briefly, tilting her head. She traced patterns with her fingers, her eyes following the movements as if she were conducting an orchestra. Suddenly, a sphere twisted incorrectly. Alien students panicked, their tentacles or multiple arms moving frantically. Lena, however, remained calm. She adjusted her approach slightly, moving the spheres with an almost musical precision. The lattice stabilized and then formed a perfect pattern. Professor Xylar leaned forward, his feathers ruffling in excitement. "Remarkable," he muttered. "She is not just solving the problems. She is predicting them. No algorithm, no alien mind could do this." The crowd watched wide-eyed. Even the most skeptical students could not deny what they were seeing. This human child, small and seemingly fragile, was performing feats of intelligence far beyond the capabilities of anyone in the room. As the puzzles continued, Lena's speed and accuracy remained unmatched. She solved simulations of black holes forming, quantum entanglement patterns, and multi-dimensional pathways. Each puzzle was more than a test. It was a demonstration of how human creativity could transcend rigid logic. The senior council observed quietly, recording every detail. "Her mind works differently," Threk said softly. "She does not follow predictable steps. She sees the whole puzzle as a living thing." "Exactly," Xylar replied. "Her intelligence is not linear. It is holistic, intuitive, and adaptive. We must learn from her methods." By midday, the final challenge was activated, a complex web of time loops, spatial anomalies, and dynamic energy flows. It was the most difficult puzzle ever presented in the Academy's history. Alien students hesitated, some refusing to even attempt it. The hologram shifted and glowed with unpredictable patterns, designed to defeat even the most advanced minds. Lena approached it calmly. "This one looks tricky," she said softly, "but I think I can see it." Her fingers moved swiftly over her tablet. She hummed a quiet tune, tapping, dragging, and aligning symbols. The holograms responded instantly. Loops untangled themselves, energy flows aligned, and the complex web slowly began to resolve. The crowd gasped. For over an hour, Lena worked steadily, never faltering, never doubting. She paused once to think, adjusting her approach slightly, and then continued. Symbols rotated and folded, patterns merged, and finally the web blinked green. It was solved. Silence fell over the hall. The Omega Labyrinth had been impressive, but the Continuum Grid was unprecedented, and Lena had conquered it. Professor Xylar approached her slowly. "Child," he said, his voice filled with awe, "you have done what no alien, no AI has ever done. You have solved problems designed to surpass centuries of knowledge and computation." Lena smiled. "I just listened to the puzzles," she said softly. "They tell me what to do if you pay attention." The aliens in the room were stunned. They realized something extraordinary. Humans, a species considered primitive by the galaxy, had a form of intelligence unlike anything they had encountered. Their brains were not rigid or predictable. They could improvise, adapt, and see solutions that others could not. Word of Lena's abilities spread beyond the Academy. News networks across dozens of star systems broadcast her achievements. Scientists, explorers, and scholars from other planets became curious. A human child had solved puzzles that had defeated the galaxy's greatest minds. Many could not believe it, yet the evidence was clear. That evening, Lena returned to the observation garden. Floating holographic flowers glimmered softly around her. She looked up at the simulated stars, her small face calm and thoughtful. Professor Xylar approached, sitting beside her. "You are extraordinary," he said quietly. "I have studied intelligence for centuries, and yet you surpass everything I have known. You are not just smart, you are different." Lena tilted her head. "I don't think I'm different," she said simply. "I just like puzzles and I like paying attention. That's all." Xylar studied her, realizing that her simplicity was the key. Alien intelligence was structured, precise, and predictable. Humans were not. Their minds could jump across problems, improvise, and see connections others could not. That was a power the galaxy had underestimated for too long. Over the following days, Lena continued to work on puzzles, experiments, and simulations. Her methods were studied carefully. Alien scholars recorded every movement, every tap of her fingers, every way she analyzed and solved problems. They discovered something remarkable. Her mind approached challenges like music with rhythm, intuition, and creativity. Logic alone could not explain her success. Professor Zylar finally admitted what he had been reluctant to say aloud. Humans, though small and underestimated, possessed a kind of intelligence that could surpass even the most advanced alien minds. Lena Carter was proof. The little human girl had changed the perception of her entire species. Where once humans were considered primitive, they were now seen as unpredictable, creative, and capable of astonishing brilliance. The galaxy had begun to realize that intelligence was not only measured by knowledge or computation, but by imagination, intuition, and the courage to think differently. And Lena Carter, with her tablet and her quiet confidence, was just getting started. The announcement came early one morning across the entire Galactic Academy. The Galactic Challenge of Minds would be held in 2 standard weeks. This ancient event brought together the brightest minds from across the galaxy to compete in puzzles, simulations, and mental feats designed to test every type of intelligence. For centuries, only the most advanced aliens and AI constructs had competed. No human had ever been allowed to enter. Humans were considered too young, too small, too unprepared. But Lena Carter's recent feats had changed everything. The Council of the Academy, impressed and astonished, approved her participation. The news spread quickly. Students and professors alike whispered in excitement. Some were skeptical. Many were curious. A few were terrified. "This is unprecedented," muttered Shara, the Vrelk student who had once laughed at Lena. A human child competing in the greatest mental contest in the galaxy? Professor Zylar, observing the reaction, simply nodded. Yes, and she will show the galaxy that intelligence is more than computation and memory. It is creativity, intuition, and courage. Lena herself remained calm. She packed her tablet, humming a quiet tune as she walked through the corridors of the academy. "I wonder what the puzzles will be," she said softly. "I hope they are tricky." The day of the challenge arrived. The grand arena was immense, shaped like a giant spiral galaxy. Its floors shimmered with light, holographic projectors displaying moving constellations, floating geometric puzzles, and shifting streams of energy. Competitors from countless worlds assembled, each more impressive than the last. Some had 6 arms, others had wings that glowed with intelligence. Some were telepathic, able to anticipate the thoughts of their opponents. Others were AI constructs capable of instant calculation. Lena stepped into the arena, tiny compared to most of the competitors. She carried her tablet with confidence, her small fingers tapping the device lightly. She felt a mixture of excitement and curiosity, but no fear. A booming voice announced the start of the competition. "Competitors, the Galactic Challenge of Minds begins now. Solve the puzzles, demonstrate your intelligence, and may the best mind prevail." The first puzzle activated. Holographic cubes floated in the air, each side displaying complex symbols and rotating independently. Alien competitors activated neural links, their minds glowing with streams of data. AI minds calculated billions of possibilities per second. Lena, however, simply looked at the cubes, tilting her head and observing the patterns. Her fingers moved quickly over the tablet. The cubes aligned, folded, and clicked into place. The solution appeared before anyone else could even begin. The crowd gasped. "Impossible," muttered one of the senior professors. "No human should be able to complete this puzzle so quickly." The next challenge was even more difficult. Streams of energy swirled around the arena, forming a dynamic maze. Competitors had to navigate not only logic but also probability, intuition, and timing. AI constructs analyzed every possible route. Telepathic aliens tried to anticipate moves. Lena simply observed. She saw the energy streams as patterns, as pathways, as a story. She moved her fingers across her tablet, tapping symbols and connecting points. Slowly but steadily, the maze unfolded, guiding itself toward the solution. Minutes later, the maze stabilized. Lena had completed it. Alien competitors stared in disbelief. AI constructs flickered, recalculating, unable to catch up. Telepathic beings looked at her, their glowing minds shocked by her speed and intuition. Professor Zylar, watching from the sidelines, felt a mixture of pride and amazement. He had suspected her brilliance, but now it was undeniable. Lena was not just talented, she was extraordinary. The next round tested memory and strategy. Holographic boards displayed sequences of events, each linked to multiple possibilities. Competitors had to anticipate outcomes, predict moves, and adapt to changes. Many struggled. Even the most experienced aliens faltered, their patterns breaking under the complexity. Lena, however, observed carefully. She noticed connections that others missed, patterns that linked events together. Her fingers moved swiftly, adjusting sequences and aligning outcomes. The board stabilized. She had succeeded again. The audience erupted into applause. Alien spectators floated backward in astonishment. She's unbeatable, whispered one. But the challenges were far from over. The final round combined all elements: logic, intuition, memory, creativity, and prediction. Holographic constellations rotated, shifting pathways unfolded, and energy flows changed unpredictably. Competitors activated their full neural capacities, connecting to machines, projecting thoughts, and moving faster than the eye could follow. Lena, small and alone, studied the shifting patterns. She hummed softly, tapping her tablet in a rhythm that seemed almost musical. Slowly, she began connecting the constellations, folding pathways and aligning energy flows. She anticipated shifts before they happened, predicting the movement of patterns instinctively. Alien competitors grew nervous. Their speed and power could not match her adaptability. AI constructs flickered, unable to predict the leaps in her thinking. Even telepathic beings struggled to anticipate her next moves. Hour after hour, Lena worked steadily. She did not panic. She did not hesitate. She treated each puzzle as a conversation, listening to the patterns and responding with care. The audience watched, mesmerized. This human child, barely 10 standard years old, was performing feats that the galaxy had never witnessed. Finally, the last puzzle resolved. Symbols aligned, paths merged, energy stabilized. Lena Carter had completed the Galactic Challenge of Minds. The arena fell silent. No one moved. Every competitor stared at her in disbelief. Then the crowd erupted. Cheers, applause, and holographic fireworks filled the arena. Even the most skeptical aliens could not deny it. The human child had won. She had conquered challenges designed to defeat the galaxy's greatest minds. Professor Xylar approached her slowly. His feathers shimmered in the bright lights. "Child," he said, his voice filled with awe, "you have done what no being, no AI, and no scholar could do. You have proven that humans are capable of intelligence beyond anything we imagined." Lena smiled. "I just like solving puzzles," she said simply. "I like seeing patterns and figuring out how they work. That's all." Xylar realized then that her simplicity was the key to her brilliance. While aliens and AI relied on calculation, prediction, and rigid logic, Lena relied on observation, intuition, and creativity. Her human mind could leap across solutions, improvise, and adapt in ways no one else could. The result of the Galactic Challenge was recorded and broadcast across the galaxy. Humans, once considered primitive and weak, were now recognized as intelligent, creative, and capable of extraordinary thought. Lena Carter had not only won the challenge, she had changed perceptions of her entire species. That night, Lena returned to the observation garden. The floating holographic flowers glimmered softly around her. Professor Xylar sat beside her, reflecting on what he had witnessed. "You are extraordinary," he said quietly. "You have shown the galaxy that intelligence is not only about memory, logic, or computation. It is also about creativity, intuition, and courage. Humans have something special?" Lena smiled, looking up at the simulated stars above. "I just like thinking," she said. "And I like listening to what the puzzles want me to do." Xylar nodded. He knew then that the Academy, and perhaps the galaxy itself, would never be the same. The arrival of Lena Carter had opened a new chapter in understanding intelligence. Humanity's potential was now visible to the stars. And Lena, the little human girl who loved puzzles, had only just begun her journey. The galaxy was buzzing. News from the Galactic Challenge of Minds had spread far and wide, reaching every corner of known space. Lena Carter, the human child, had not only participated in the challenge but had won it. Her performance had shocked the galaxy, and in the days that followed, people began to realize something remarkable. Humans were not just a primitive species. They were an enigma, capable of feats that even the most advanced minds could not comprehend. Back at the Galactic Academy, the aftermath of the challenge was being felt everywhere. Professor Xylar, who had initially doubted the human child, now sat in his office, a holographic projection of the results from the competition flickering in front of him. His feathers ruffled in thought as he reviewed the data, but something gnawed at the back of his mind. Lena had solved problems that even the most advanced artificial intelligences couldn't predict. She hadn't just solved puzzles, she had redefined what intelligence meant. Xylar's 4 eyes blinked slowly as he thought. What had Lena done that others could not? What was it about her mind that allowed her to see patterns no one else could? He had been a scholar of logic and reason for centuries, but Lena's mind worked on a level that defied all his training. "Professor, are you still reviewing the challenge results?" A soft voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Shara, the Vrelk student who had once mocked Lena. Now she stood at the doorway of his office, her glowing eyes filled with curiosity and respect. "Yes," Xylar said, his tone deep and measured. "I need to understand." "How she does it." Shara stepped forward, her multiple limbs graceful as she moved. The puzzles she solved weren't just logical. They were creative, unpredictable. We tried to replicate her methods, but we couldn't. She doesn't think like we do. Xylar nodded slowly. Exactly. She doesn't follow the rules we've spent centuries perfecting. She bypasses the complexity of logic and taps into something else. Something we've ignored. Shara tilted her head. "So you're saying that humans don't solve problems like we do?" Xylar's 4 eyes focused on her. "That's right. They solve problems by feeling them. They don't rely on structured steps or algorithms. They rely on intuition and imagination, and in that they are incredibly powerful." It was then that Xylar realized something else. Lena had been solving the puzzles in a way that was not bound by the logical limitations he had spent his life studying. She was working from an entirely different approach, something fresh, untapped, and limitless. The human mind was capable of thinking in ways that even the galaxy's most sophisticated minds couldn't predict. Humanity had a unique intelligence, one that went beyond calculation and into creativity. That evening, after the Academy's lessons had ended, Xylar made his way to the observation garden. It had been Lena's favorite spot, where she often sat by herself contemplating the stars. He found her there again, humming softly as she gazed up at the simulated constellations above. "Lena," Xylar called gently, stepping closer. "May I sit with you?" Lena looked up and smiled brightly as she always did. "Of course, Professor Xylar, I like the stars." Xylar sat down beside her. The gentle hum of the holographic garden surrounded them, and for a moment neither of them spoke. Lena's eyes were focused on the lights above, her small fingers stilling the motion of the soft floating flowers that glowed in the air. "You have changed everything, Lena," Xylar said at last, his voice sincere. "The way you think, the way you solve problems. You have shown us a new path." Lena smiled, tilting her head slightly. "I just like to listen to the puzzles, Professor. They tell me what they want to be." Xylar's heart, if he had one, swelled with respect for the young human, and in doing so, "You've shown us all that intelligence isn't just about memorizing facts or solving equations. It's about creativity, about seeing the world differently." Lena thought for a moment before responding. "I don't think I'm doing anything special, Professor. I just see things that fit together. Puzzles aren't as hard as they look. You just have to know where to start." Xylar shook his head slowly, his feathers shimmering in the dim light. "But that's the point, Lena. No one else sees things the way you do. You don't follow the rules we've set down. You follow something else, something that no one else has understood." For the first time, Lena seemed thoughtful. I guess that's true. I don't always follow the same steps as others, but I don't think that makes it wrong." "No," Xylar said, his voice soft but firm. "It makes you something unique. You have shown us that intelligence isn't a fixed thing. It is alive, changing, and unpredictable. And the galaxy needs to understand this. Humanity needs to be recognized for what it truly is." Lena looked at him, her small face serious. "You mean humans like me?" Xylar nodded. "Yes. You are the first of your kind to truly demonstrate this ability, but I believe others will follow. Human intelligence is not something to be underestimated. We have all been too focused on rigid logic, but you've opened our eyes to something we missed. Humans have the ability to think beyond what we can imagine." The two of them sat in silence for a long while, looking at the stars. For Lena, the galaxies had always seemed vast and full of puzzles waiting to be solved. But now, it was the people around her who had become the puzzle. She was changing how the entire galaxy saw her kind. In the days that followed, Xylar pushed the academy to do something unprecedented. He proposed a new course of study, human cognitive studies, dedicated to understanding how human minds worked, how their creativity and intuition could be used to solve problems that had eluded the brightest minds across the galaxy. The idea was met with both excitement and resistance. Some of the Academy's scholars were reluctant to study a species they had long underestimated. Others, however, recognized the potential. Soon the first humans were invited to the Academy's advanced studies programs. They were treated not just as students but as mentors, showing their alien peers how to approach problems in new and inventive ways.
Lena, still only a child, became a symbol of humanity's rising potential.
She became the first human to be offered a place as a professor at the Academy, a title no one had thought would ever be given to one of her species. But Lena did not see herself as a professor. She just saw herself as a person who liked to solve puzzles, and as long as there were puzzles to solve, she would keep listening to them, paying attention to the pieces, and finding new ways to connect them. One day, as Lena stood in front of a large holographic screen, a new complex puzzle loaded. It was a problem that had stumped the brightest minds for years. Alien and AI competitors had tried and failed. Lena smiled to herself. She tapped her tablet and the symbols began to rearrange, aligning in ways no one else had thought possible. Professor Xylar, who had been watching from a distance, nodded to himself. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had changed. The universe was no longer just a place for logical beings and predictable minds. Now it was a place for creativity, innovation, and most importantly, humanity. And Lena Carter, the small girl from Earth who had once been underestimated, had shown the galaxy that the greatest strength lay in thinking differently. As the puzzle finally clicked into place, Lena looked up and smiled. "I told you it was just a puzzle," Professor Xylar smiled back. "Yes, Lena, and you've solved it just like all the others. But this time there was no applause, no grand recognition. Only the quiet knowledge that the galaxy had just begun to understand what humanity was truly capable of. And it all started with a little girl who loved puzzles.